Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. This is my story, one I never thought I'd share, but maybe someone out there needs to hear it. What happened to me changed everything I believed in, about love, trust, and betrayal. So, here it goes. The sheer, unadulterated audacity of it all still makes my blood boil, even now, months later. If someone had laid out the script of my life, this particular plot twist, I would have laughed in their face. Me, Dave, the guy who prided himself on being observant, on understanding people, completely blindsided by the one person I trusted implicitly, my wife, Christine. The memory of her, flushed with excitement, planning that damned baby shower, her eyes sparkling as she talked about decorations and games, it seared into my brain. She said it was for her best friend, Sarah. A celebration of new life, a testament to their enduring friendship. I bought it all, hook, line, and sinker. I even offered to pay for half of it, thinking I was being the supportive husband. Supportive? What a joke. Little did I know, the guest of honor wasn't Sarah's baby at all. The tiny clothes, the pastel balloons, the three-tiered cake with little baby booties on top. It was all for her affair baby. My wife was throwing a party in my house for a child conceived in an act of ultimate betrayal. And I was footing the bill. Christine and I had been married for 10 years. A decade. We met in college, a whirlwind romance that settled into a comfortable, loving partnership. Or so I thought. We had the house in the suburbs, 2 cars in the driveway, decent jobs. The picture-perfect life, right? We'd talked about kids, of course. Early on, it was always someday. Then someday became maybe next year. The years ticked by. I was ready, eager even. I'd see kids playing in the park, fathers throwing their toddlers in the air, and this ache would settle in my chest. But Christine always had a reason to postpone. First, it was her career. She was climbing the ladder in her marketing firm, and I supported that. Then, it was about getting our finances perfectly in order, buying the bigger house. Understandable. Then, it was just vaguer. "I'm not ready yet, Dave," she'd say, a hint of something unreadable in her eyes. "Let's just enjoy us for a little longer." I try to talk about it, really talk, but it often ended with her shutting down or me backing off, not wanting to pressure her. I loved her, and I figured we had time. We were solid. Or at least, that's the narrative I'd carefully constructed in my own mind. Looking back, the signs were probably there, subtle cracks in the foundation I'd willfully ignored. Her late nights at work becoming more frequent, the way she'd guard her phone, the slight emotional distance that had crept in so slowly I barely registered it as a change, more like the natural ebb and flow of a long-term relationship. How wrong I was. I thought we were a team, weathering life together. Turns out, she was playing a whole different game, on a whole different field, with a whole different teammate. And I was left standing alone, looking like a fool. The gut punch of that realization still knocks the wind out of me sometimes, even after everything that's happened since. We weren't just growing apart. She was actively, deceitfully, building a separate life. The baby shower idea came up about 6 months ago. Christine came home one evening, all bubbly and excited. "Sarah's pregnant," she announced, beaming. Sarah was her oldest friend, practically a sister. They'd known each other since kindergarten. So, of course, Sarah being pregnant was big news. I was happy for Sarah. She and her husband Mark had been trying for a while. "That's fantastic news, honey," I said, genuinely pleased. "We should have them over to celebrate." Christine's smile widened. "Actually," she said, "I was thinking. Sarah's a bit overwhelmed with everything, and her family lives out of state. I'd love to host her baby shower here. Like a really special one. What do you think?" Our house was definitely big enough, and Christine loved hosting parties. She was good at it, too, meticulous with details, always ensuring everyone had a good time. It seemed like a perfectly normal, kind gesture. Of course, sounds great, I replied. Whatever you need, let me know. We can make it really special for her. She threw her arms around me, kissing me with an enthusiasm that, in retrospect, felt a little too performative. Oh, thank you, Dave. You're the best. The planning started almost immediately. Our dining room table became a command center of pastel fabric swatches, invitation samples, and lists of baby names. She was on the phone constantly, supposedly with Sarah, discussing themes and guest lists. She'd spend hours on Pinterest, her face illuminated by the screen, a soft, secretive smile playing on her lips. I'd occasionally ask, "How's Sarah doing? Is she excited?" And Christine would launch into detailed descriptions of Sarah's morning sickness, her cravings, her joy. All lies. Every single word. She was crafting a masterpiece of deception, and I was her unwitting audience, applauding her performance. She even got me involved in some of the heavy lifting, moving furniture around to make space, picking up supplies, taste testing cake samples. I remember complaining good-naturedly about the sheer volume of pink and blue streamers, and she just laughed, that light, airy laugh that I used to love. Now, it sounds like a screech in my memory. The house slowly transformed. It started to feel less like our home and more like a pastel-colored shrine to impending parenthood. And through it all, I felt a pang of longing, a quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, seeing all this baby stuff around, celebrating Sarah's new arrival, might nudge Christine closer to wanting one of our own. What a naive idiot I was. The irony is almost too much to bear. I was hoping this baby shower would bring us closer to having a family, while she was using it to celebrate the family she was building with someone else. The week leading up to the shower was a whirlwind of activity. Christine was a blur of motion, coordinating deliveries, arranging flowers, and triple-checking every detail. She seemed stressed, yes, but also strangely exhilarated. I attributed it to the pressure of hosting a perfect event for her best friend. There were a few odd moments, though. Things that pricked at the edge of my awareness, but never quite formed into concrete suspicions. Like when I asked if Mark, Sarah's husband, was going to be there. Christine waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, no. It's a girls-only thing. You know how these things are. Mark will be picking Sarah up afterwards." Fair enough, I thought, though many showers these days were co-ed. Then there was the guest list. I didn't recognize a lot of the names she mentioned. New friends of Sarah's from her prenatal yoga class, Christine explained smoothly. I even offered to help on the day itself, maybe play bartender or help with parking, but she was insistent. "No, no, you go out, have fun. Go golfing with the guys or catch a game. This is our girl time." She practically pushed me out the door that Saturday morning, a bright, forced smile plastered on her face. "Enjoy your day off, honey. Don't worry about a thing here." I should have seen it. I should have felt it. The frantic energy, the slight desperation in her eyes, the way she avoided any real, deep conversations that week. But I was too busy being the understanding husband, too wrapped up in my own misplaced faith in her, in us. I remember feeling a little bit proud, actually, watching her orchestrate everything, thinking, wow, she's really going all out for her friend. The truth is, she was going all out, all right, but not for Sarah. She was meticulously crafting the stage for her grand deception, making sure every prop was in place, every actor knew their lines, except for me, the clueless fool whose life was about to be detonated. The day of the shower arrived, a bright, sunny Saturday. I left in the morning, as instructed, to play a round of golf with my buddies. I remember feeling light, almost carefree, looking forward to a relaxing day, completely oblivious to the ticking time bomb that was my marriage, set to explode in my own home. My golf game was terrible that day. I couldn't focus. A strange sense of unease had settled over me, a low hum of anxiety I couldn't quite shake. I kept thinking about Christine, about the house, about the shower. It wasn't a specific suspicion, not yet, just a feeling that something was off. I chalked it up to just being a bit out of sorts. Maybe I was coming down with something. My friends ribbed me about my performance on the course, and I laughed it off, but the feeling lingered. I cut the game short, making some excuse about needing to get back. I told myself I just wanted to make sure Christine didn't need any last-minute help, even though she'd been so insistent I stay away. Maybe I'd surprise her, be the hero who swoops in with extra ice or something. Looking back, I think some subconscious part of me knew. Some primal instinct was screaming that I needed to go home. As I drove back, the unease grew stronger with every mile. The sun was still shining, birds were chirping, a perfectly normal suburban afternoon. But my stomach was churning. I pulled onto our street and saw the cars. Dozens of them, lining both sides of the road, spilling over from our driveway. More than I would have expected for Sarah's shower, given her relatively small local circle of friends, or so I thought. A little knot tightened in my chest. I parked a little way down the street and walked towards our house. Music and laughter drifted out from the open windows, the generic, cheerful sounds of a party. But as I got closer, I saw a banner. A huge, professionally printed banner strung across our porch. It wasn't the "Congratulations, Sarah" banner I'd half expected. The letters were big, cursive, and glittery, and they spelled out a name I didn't recognize. "Congratulations, C. Celloe," it proclaimed, with little storks and rattles decorating the edges. Chloe? Who the hell was Chloe? Sarah's middle name? A nickname I'd never heard? My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. My heart started to pound, a frantic drum against my ribs. I felt a cold dread creeping up my spine. This wasn't right. Something was very, very wrong. I walked up the driveway, past cars I didn't recognize, towards my own front door, feeling like an intruder at a stranger's party. The front door was slightly ajar. I could hear Christine's voice, animated, happy, louder than the others. She was telling a story, and a group of women were laughing. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. And that's when my world didn't just crack. It shattered. The living room was packed. Women everywhere, all cooing and smiling. Balloons, streamers, mountains of presents wrapped in pink and gold. And in the center of it all, on the new armchair we'd bought together, the one I was still paying off, sat Christine. She was glowing, radiant, a triumphant smile on her face. She was wearing a new dress, a soft, flowing maternity dress that hugged a very noticeable, very round baby bump. A bump I had never seen before. A bump that couldn't possibly be real, because Christine wasn't pregnant. Or at least, she hadn't been pregnant the last time I'd seen her stomach, which, I sickeningly realized, had been a while. She always changed in the bathroom, or when I wasn't in the room, citing privacy or feeling self-conscious. Excuses. All excuses. My mind reeled. For a split second, I thought I'd walked into some bizarre play, a surreal dream. Maybe it was a joke? A really elaborate, twisted prank? But the faces in the room, the way they looked at Christine, the way Christine herself looked, so genuinely, undeniably pregnant, it was no joke. And then I saw Sarah. Christine's best friend Sarah. She was standing near the gift table, looking uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact with everyone, especially with Christine. She wasn't pregnant. Not even a little bit. She was as slim as ever. The pieces clicked into place with a horrifying, sickening thud. The late nights. The secretive phone calls. The emotional distance. The insistence I stay away today. The banner with the unknown name. And Christine, sitting there, queen of her castle of lies, celebrating her pregnancy. Not our pregnancy. Her pregnancy. With someone else. The air rushed out of my lungs. The cheerful party sounds faded into a dull roar. My vision tunneled, focusing only on Christine, on her smiling, deceitful face, and the impossible curve of her belly. Betrayal. It was a word I'd understood intellectually, but I'd never felt its full, visceral force until that moment. It was a physical blow, leaving me breathless and reeling. She looked up then, her eyes scanning the room, and she saw me. Standing in the doorway, my golf shoes still on, my face probably a mask of shock and horror. Her smile faltered, just for a second. A flicker of something, panic? Guilt? Crossed her face before it was quickly replaced by a look of defiance, almost of triumph. She knew. She knew I knew. And in that instant, I understood the depth of her deception, the cold calculation behind it all. This wasn't just an affair. This was a whole new life she'd built, a life she was now brazenly celebrating in my home, with my money, surrounded by strangers who were all in on her secret. The baby shower wasn't for Sarah. It was for Christine. And the baby wasn't mine. The shock was like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. I just stood there, rooted to the spot in the doorway, my mind struggling to process the scene unfolding before me. Christine, my wife, was pregnant, very pregnant, and I had no idea. How? How could I not know? The maternity dress she was wearing, the one that so clearly defined the swell of her belly, was new to me. When had she bought it? When had she started wearing it? My mind flashed back through the past few months, her always being tired, her stomach issues, her insistence on sleeping in loose-fitting clothes, her aversion to me touching her stomach, which I'd put down to her not feeling well. The excuses, always the excuses, plausible enough on their own, but together they painted a horrifying picture of meticulous deception. She'd been hiding this from me, in plain sight, for months. The room was still buzzing with chatter, but it sounded distant, like I was underwater. All I could focus on was Christine. She met my gaze, and for a fleeting moment, I saw a flash of fear in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a chilling composure, an almost defiant look. It was as if she was daring me to react, to make a scene. And the other women, some of them were starting to notice me, the stunned man standing in the doorway. A few curious glances turned into hushed whispers. Sarah, her supposed best friend, was now actively avoiding looking in my direction, her face pale. She knew. Of course, she knew. She was complicit in this charade. The banner above the mantelpiece screamed, "Congratulations, CHLOE. Chloe." Not a name we had ever discussed. Not a name I had ever heard. My heart, which had been hammering against my ribs, seemed to seize. The name of her affair baby. The audacity of it was staggering. To not only have an affair, to not only get pregnant by another man, but to then orchestrate this elaborate celebration in our home, using our money, under the guise of it being for her best friend. It was a level of cruelty and deceit I couldn't have imagined. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. The cheerful decorations, the pink and blue balloons, the piles of beautifully wrapped gifts, they all seemed to mock me, symbols of a joy that was built on my pain and humiliation. I wanted to scream, to rage, to overturn the carefully arranged table of cupcakes and finger sandwiches. But I was frozen. My legs felt like lead, my voice trapped in my throat. What does a man do in this situation? How do you react when your entire world implodes in the span of a few seconds, in your own living room, in front of 24 strangers and the woman you thought you knew? Christine finally broke the silence, her voice a little too bright, a little too forced. "Dave, honey, you're back early. I thought you were golfing all day." She even managed to smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. The other women looked back and forth between us, the festive atmosphere rapidly evaporating, replaced by an awkward, palpable tension. Some of them probably knew exactly who I was and what was happening. Others might have just realized the host's husband had stumbled into something he wasn't supposed to see. That I finally found my voice, though it came out as a choked whisper. "Christine, what is this?" My gaze swept around the room, at the unfamiliar faces, the baby decorations, and landed back on her swollen belly. Her smile tightened. "It's a baby shower, silly," she said, trying to maintain the facade, but her eyes darted nervously towards her friends. One or two of them looked deeply uncomfortable, shifting in their seats. Sarah looked like she wanted the ground to swallow her whole. A baby shower, I repeated, my voice gaining a bit more strength, laced with a dawning, horrifying understanding. For Chloe, I gestured towards the banner. And you're pregnant. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of a devastating fact that was settling into my bones like a chilling frost. Christine took a deep breath. I could see her steeling herself. Yes, Dave, she said, her voice firmer now, almost challenging. I am. We need to talk. Later. Later? She thought we could just talk about this later? After this public unveiling of her betrayal? The sheer nerve of it sent a fresh wave of anger, hot and sharp, cutting through the shock. Talk later. I could hear my voice rising, but I didn't care. You throw a party for your affair baby in my house, with my money, and you think we can just talk about this later? The words affair baby hung in the air, heavy and damning. A collective gasp went through the room. Several women looked shocked, their eyes wide. Others exchanged knowing glances. So, some of them did know. They knew, and they'd come here to celebrate her deceit. The realization made me feel even more sickened. Christine's face hardened. The last vestiges of her forced pleasantries vanished. Don't you dare, Dave, she hissed, her voice low and venomous. Don't you dare try to ruin this for me. Ruin this for her. The absurdity of her statement almost made me laugh, a bitter, humorless sound. She had already ruined everything. Our marriage, my trust, my image of the life we had built together. It was all ashes. I looked around at the women again. So you all knew? I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and pain. You all knew she was cheating on me, pregnant with another man's child, and you came here to celebrate it? Silence. A few shook their heads, feigning ignorance, but their eyes betrayed them. Others just stared at the floor. Sarah finally looked up, her eyes filled with tears. Dave, I didn't know what to do, she stammered. She put me in an impossible position. Impossible position? I scoffed. How about telling your supposed best friend's husband that he's being played for a fool? Would that have been too difficult? My anger was now a roaring inferno. I wanted to lash out, to break something, to make them feel even a fraction of the pain I was feeling. I took a step into the room, then another. The women instinctively recoiled. All eyes were on me and Christine. She was still sitting in that damned armchair, her hands protectively on her belly. The image of her shielding her lover's child, in my home, was a fresh stab to the heart. I don't remember exactly what I said next. It was a blur of accusations, questions, and raw, unfiltered pain. I remember demanding to know who the father was. I remember asking her how long this had been going on. I remember the word divorce erupting from my lips, tasting like ash and finality. Through it all, Christine remained mostly silent, her face a mask of cold indifference, occasionally punctuated by sharp, defensive retorts. She didn't deny anything. She couldn't, not with the evidence so blatantly on display. Some of her friends started to gather their things, muttering apologies or excuses, eager to escape the unfolding drama. Good. Let them run. Let them carry the story of Christine's grand betrayal back to whatever social circles they inhabited. The party was definitely over. The air was thick with unspoken truths and the stench of deceit. The pastel decorations seemed to wilt under the weight of it all. I remember looking at the mountain of gifts, all those tiny outfits and baby toys, meant for a child that represented the death of my marriage. The urge to destroy them, to set fire to the whole charade, was almost overwhelming. But then, a strange sort of calm descended over me. A cold, hard clarity. This wasn't just about the pain and the betrayal anymore. This was about survival. about extricating myself from this toxic mess with some shred of dignity intact. Christine finally stood up, her movements a little clumsy with the fake pregnancy bump. Yes, I was starting to suspect it was padding, given how quickly it had appeared to me, and how she'd been so careful to hide her body. Or maybe it was real, and she'd just been incredibly good at hiding it. The thought was dizzying. "I think you should leave, Dave," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "This is my party." Her party. In my house. The sheer, unmitigated gall of that woman. I almost laughed. "Your party? Christine, this is my house. The one we bought together. The one I've been paying the mortgage on while you were out, doing whatever, with whoever." My voice was shaking again, but this time with cold fury. "No, I don't think I'll be the one leaving." The few remaining guests were now practically stampeding for the door. Sarah was one of the last to leave. She paused at the doorway, looked at me with pity in her eyes, and whispered, "I'm so sorry, Dave. Truly." I just stared at her, too numb to respond. Sorry wasn't going to cut it. Not even close. And then it was just the two of us. Christine and I, standing in the wreckage of her baby shower, the wreckage of our marriage. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by my ragged breathing. She stood there, defiant, her hands still on that bump. Real or not, it was a symbol of everything she had destroyed. "So," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "Who is he, Christine? Who's the father of Chloe?" She just stared back at me, her expression unreadable. The battle lines had been drawn. The shocking discovery had been made. And now, the real war was about to begin. The silence that followed the last guest's departure was heavier than any argument could have been. It pressed down on me, suffocating, filled with the ghosts of 10 years of shared laughter, dreams, and what I had foolishly believed was love. Christine finally dropped her hands from her stomach, the defiant posture deflating slightly. She looked tired, suddenly older. The vibrant, glowing, expectant mother from half an hour ago was gone, replaced by a woman I barely recognized, a stranger with my wife's face. "His name is Michael," she said, her voice quiet, almost flat. Michael. The name meant nothing to me. A random stranger who had apparently been significant enough to father her child and dismantle my life. "Michael," I repeated, the name feeling alien on my tongue. "And how long has Michael been in the picture?" She hesitated, looking away towards the window, as if the manicured lawns of our neighbors held the answers she was reluctant to give. "About 1.5 years," she finally admitted, still not looking at me. 1.5 years. 18 months. My mind reeled. For 18 months, she had been living a double life. 18 months of lies, of stolen moments, of secret smiles and whispered phone calls. 18 months while I, her husband, had been oblivious, trusting, working to build a future I thought we both wanted. The timeline was a brutal punch to the gut. It covered countless anniversaries, birthdays, holidays we'd supposedly celebrated together, all tainted now by the knowledge of her ongoing betrayal. 1.5 years? My voice was dangerously calm. "So, all those late nights at work, all those business trips." She nodded mutely, her gaze fixed on something outside. The pieces were falling into place, each one a fresh shard of glass in my heart. The times she'd been distant, irritable. The times she'd suddenly been overly affectionate, a guilt-driven performance I'd been too naive to see through. I sank onto the sofa, the one opposite the armchair she'd occupied like a queen on her throne. My legs suddenly felt too weak to support me. The room still smelled faintly of vanilla frosting and baby powder, a sickeningly sweet aroma that now made my stomach churn. "And the baby?" "Chloe," I said, the name still tasting bitter. "Is Michael the father?" It was a stupid question, the answer obvious, but I needed to hear her say it. I needed to hear her confirm the ultimate betrayal. She finally turned to look at me, her eyes surprisingly devoid of tears. There was a hardness there, a resolve I hadn't seen before. "Yes, Dave." Michael is the father. There it was. The unvarnished, brutal truth. No apologies, no remorse in her voice. Just a statement of fact. As if she were discussing the weather, not the fact that she was carrying another man's child, a child conceived while married to me. The coldness of her admission was perhaps more painful than the truth itself. Where was the woman I had married? The woman who cried at sad movies, who rescued stray kittens, who I thought had a good and compassionate heart. She seemed to have vanished, replaced by this calculating, unfeeling stranger. So, what was the plan, Christine? I asked, genuinely curious in a detached, academic sort of way, like a scientist examining a particularly venomous specimen. Were you just going to spring this on me? Hope I wouldn't notice the extra baby in the house? Or was the plan always to leave me for Michael, and this circus today was just your grand farewell tour? She flinched at that, a flicker of something, shame? Anger? Crossing her face. It's not like that, Dave. Then what is it like, Christine? I leaned forward, my voice rising again despite my attempts to remain calm. Enlighten me. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you meticulously planned to humiliate me in the most public way possible, while celebrating your infidelity. In my own home. I didn't plan for you to find out like this, she said, her voice low. You weren't supposed to be here. I told you to stay out all day. Oh, I see, I said, a humorless laugh escaping me. So it's my fault for coming home early? My fault for walking in on your secret party for your secret baby. Her logic was astounding, breathtaking in its self-absorption. I was going to tell you, she insisted. Soon. Soon? When, Christine? After the baby was born? When you'd already moved Michael into the spare room. The sarcasm dripped from my words. She shook her head. No. I don't know. It all got so complicated. Complicated? I stood up, unable to sit still any longer, pacing the length of the living room, stepping around discarded party favors and fallen balloons. Complicated is when you can't decide what to have for dinner. This, Christine, this is a 5-alarm fire of betrayal. This is calculated, cold-blooded deceit. For a year and a half, you've looked me in the eye and lied to me every single day. I stopped in front of her. Why? Why not just leave? If you were so unhappy, if you wanted Michael and this baby, why not just ask for a divorce a year and a half ago? Why put me through this? Why destroy everything so theatrically? This was the question that gnawed at me. The affair was one thing, a painful but sadly common occurrence. But the elaborate cruelty of this baby shower, the public nature of it, the sheer audacity, that was something else entirely. That spoke to a depth of malice I couldn't comprehend. She looked down at her hands, fiddling with the fabric of her dress. I was scared, she whispered. Scared of what, Christine? Of hurting me? Clearly, that wasn't high on your list of concerns. I shot back. Scared of being alone. Scared of what people would say. Scared of starting over. Her voice was small, almost childlike. But I felt no pity. Not anymore. My well of compassion for her had run dry, evaporated in the heat of her betrayal. So you chose to decimate my life instead? To use me as your safety net while you built your new one? That makes you a coward, Christine. A cruel, selfish coward. She didn't respond, just continued to stare at her hands. The fight seemed to have gone out of her, leaving behind a hollow shell. But I wasn't done. I needed answers. I needed to understand the full scope of this deception. This house, I said, gesturing around the room. Our finances. Did Michael contribute to this baby fund? A part of me, the part that was still reeling from the financial implications, needed to know. She shook her head. No. Michael, he's an artist. He doesn't have a lot of money. An artist. Of course. So, I had been unknowingly funding her affair, and now, apparently, her affair baby's grand entrance into the world. The bitterness was a tangible taste in my mouth. So I paid for all of this, I said, my voice flat. The decorations, the food, the gifts that are piling up in the corner for a child that isn't mine. You used my money to celebrate your betrayal of me. It wasn't like that, she mumbled. But her defense was weak, perfunctory. It wasn't supposed to be like this. What exactly was it supposed to be like, Christine? I demanded. Did you think I just, what? Congratulate you? Offer to co-parent with you and Michael? What utopian fantasy were you living in? The silence stretched again. I realized then that there were no good answers. No explanation could ever justify what she had done. The betrayal was absolute, the damage irreparable. The love I had felt for her, the trust one had placed in her, had been systematically dismantled, lie by lie, until nothing remained but this aching void and a burning, righteous anger. I want you out, Christine, I said, the words coming out with a chilling finality that surprised even myself. Out of this house. Today. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with alarm. Dave, you can't be serious. I'm pregnant. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care where you go, I said, my voice hard as steel. Go to Michael. Go to one of your supportive friends who helped you orchestrate this freak show. But you are not spending another night under my roof. The thought of her sleeping in our bed, her body carrying another man's child, was unbearable. But my things, the baby's things. You can arrange to get them later. But you are leaving. Now. This was it. The point of no return. The confrontation had been brutal, the emotional damage catastrophic. But a strange sense of resolve was beginning to solidify within me. She had made her choices. Now I was making mine. The plan wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my home, my sanity. And the first step was purging her presence from it. The fight, I knew, was far from over. There would be lawyers, divorce proceedings, the messy untangling of a decade of shared life. But in that moment, as I watched the color drain from Christine's face, I felt a flicker of something that had been extinguished for too long, a sense of control. She had underestimated me. She had mistaken my kindness for weakness, my trust for naivety. She was about to find out just how wrong she was. Christine stared at me, her face a mixture of disbelief and dawning panic. Dave, please, she began, her voice trembling slightly. Let's not make hasty decisions. We're both upset. We can talk about this calmly. Maybe we can work something out. Work something out? I cut her off, my voice incredulous. Christine, you threw a baby shower for your affair child in my house, behind my back. What, exactly, is there to work out? Are you suggesting we co-host Chloe's first birthday party here too? Maybe invite Michael over for Sunday dinners. The sarcasm was heavy, biting. The idea of any kind of reconciliation, any kind of working things out that didn't involve her immediate departure, was laughable, offensive even. I understand you're angry, she said, trying a softer approach, the one that used to work on me when she knew she'd messed up in smaller ways. Her eyes welled up with tears, real or crocodile. I couldn't tell, nor did I care. I know I've hurt you terribly, and I am sorry for that, Dave. Truly, I am. But I'm pregnant. I need stability. I need. What you need, Christine, I interrupted, my tone unyielding, is to pack a bag and call your boyfriend, Michael the artist, or one of those delightful friends who came to celebrate your joyous deception today. You're not staying here. That's not a hasty decision. That's a fact. I crossed my arms, standing my ground. The image of her, so smug and radiant on that armchair earlier, contrasted sharply with the frightened, desperate woman standing before me now. Good. Let her feel a fraction of the turmoil she'd inflicted on me. She looked around the room, at the festive remnants of her party, her gaze lingering on the piles of gifts. But all of this, the baby's things. I can't just leave it all. You won't, I said. You can arrange a time, through lawyers if necessary, to retrieve your personal belongings and anything specifically bought for Chloe. But you are leaving today, with a suitcase. That's it. The word lawyers hung in the air. It was the first time it had been explicitly mentioned in the context of our separation, and it seemed to solidify the reality of the situation for her. Her shoulders slumped. The fight seemed to drain out of her, replaced by a weary resignation. "You really mean this, don't you?" she whispered. "More than I've ever meant anything in my life," I replied, my voice cold and even. "You've made your choice, Christine. You chose Michael. You chose this baby with him. You chose to lie to me, to betray me in the most profound way imaginable. Now you get to live with the consequences of those choices. And the first consequence is that you are no longer welcome in my life or in my home." She started to cry then, real, racking sobs. But they didn't move me. Not anymore. It was too little, too late. The damage was done, the trust shattered beyond repair. I watched her cry, feeling a strange detachment, as if observing a scene in a movie. This was the woman I had loved, the woman I had planned to spend my life with. And now, she was a stranger to me, a source of unimaginable pain. After a few minutes of her sobbing, which did nothing to change my mind, she seemed to realize it was futile. She wiped her eyes, a new, harder expression settling on her face. "Fine," she said, her voice thick with unshed tears but also a renewed spark of anger. "Fine, Dave, if that's how you want it. It's not about what I want, Christine," I corrected her. "It's about what you've done. This is the direct result of your actions." She went upstairs then, and I heard her moving around in our bedroom. No, my bedroom now. The sounds of drawers opening and closing, the rustle of clothes. I stayed downstairs, pacing, adrenaline still coursing through my veins. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, anger, betrayal, pain, but also a strange, nascent sense of liberation. The charade was over. The truth was out. And as horrible as it was, there was a certain relief in no longer living a lie, even if I hadn't been aware of it until a few hours ago. About 20 minutes later, she came downstairs, pulling a small suitcase, her face pale and tear-streaked, but her jaw set stubbornly. She didn't look at me. She walked straight to the front door. Her hand rested on the doorknob for a moment, and she paused. I thought she might say something, one last plea, one final accusation. But she just opened the door and walked out, pulling her suitcase behind her. The click of the door closing behind her was one of the loudest, most definitive sounds I'd ever heard. I stood there in the silence of the house, the festive decorations now looking garish and mocking. The smell of her perfume lingered faintly in the air, a ghost of her presence. I walked over to the window and watched as she struggled with her suitcase down the driveway. She stopped at the curb, pulled out her phone, and presumably called for a ride. Michael, I guessed. Or maybe one of her supportive friends. It didn't matter. She was gone. A wave of exhaustion washed over me, so profound I felt like I could sleep for a week. The emotional roller coaster of the day had taken its toll. I sank onto the sofa, the same one I'd collapsed onto earlier, and just sat there, staring blankly at the wall. The house felt huge, empty, and eerily quiet. The remnants of the baby shower were a stark reminder of the bomb that had detonated in my life. Slowly, methodically, I began to clean up. I started with the banner, "Congratulations, C. Chaloe." I ripped it from the mantelpiece with a savage satisfaction, tearing the glittery letters in half before shoving it into a trash bag. Then, the balloons. I popped them one by one, the sharp sounds echoing in the silent room, each pop a small act of reclaiming my space. The streamers came down next, followed by the cutesy table centerpieces. The carefully arranged cupcakes and untouched finger sandwiches went straight into the trash. I couldn't bear to look at them. The gifts were the hardest part. Piles of them, all pastel colors and cheerful wrapping paper. Tiny clothes, soft blankets, stuffed animals. Each one a testament to Christine's elaborate deception. I couldn't bring myself to open them. I just started carrying them out to the garage, stacking them in a corner, out of sight. I'd deal with them later. Maybe donate them. Or have a bonfire. The thought brought a grim smile to my face. It took hours to clear the living room of all traces of the party. By the time I was done, it was dark outside. The room looked bare, almost sterile, but it felt cleaner, lighter. It felt like mine again. I made myself a strong drink and sat down, trying to process everything. The anger was still there, a burning coal in my chest, but underneath it, a deep, profound sadness was beginning to settle in. 10 years, a decade of my life, invested in a relationship that had turned out to be a lie. How do you even begin to come to terms with that? My phone buzzed. It was a text from my sister, checking in. I'd briefly called her earlier, in a daze, right after Christine left, and mumbled something about Christine being gone, about a baby shower gone wrong. I hadn't had the strength to go into details. I typed back a short reply, assuring her I was okay, that I'd explain later. I wasn't okay, not really. But I would be. I had to be. I thought about Christine, pregnant, out there somewhere with Michael the artist. Was she scared? Regretful? Or was she relieved? Finally free to live her new life openly? I found that I didn't much care. My focus needed to be on myself now, on picking up the pieces of my shattered life and figuring out how to move forward. The path ahead looked daunting. Divorce lawyers, dividing assets, the inevitable gossip among friends and family. But there was also a strange sense of clarity. I had been living in a fog of deception, and now that fog had lifted, however brutally. I could see things as they really were. And I knew, with a certainty that resonated deep in my bones, that I deserved better. I deserved honesty, loyalty, and a love that wasn't built on lies. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. She had started this war with her betrayal, but I would be the one to finish it. Not with yelling or irrational acts, but with calm, calculated steps to protect myself, my assets, and my future. She wanted a new life with her affair partner and their baby? Fine. But she wasn't going to do it with my money or at my further expense. The seeds of a plan, a way to ensure some measure of justice, began to take root in my mind. It wasn't about revenge in the traditional sense, not about causing her pain for pain's sake. It was about fairness. It was about ensuring that the consequences of her actions fell squarely on her shoulders, not mine. And as I sat there, in the quiet solitude of my reclaimed home, I started to think about how I would achieve that. The fight was just beginning, and I was ready. The days that followed Christine's dramatic exit were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and soul-crushing discoveries. Each conversation with my newly hired attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Albright, peeled back another layer of Christine's deceit, revealing just how calculated and extensive her betrayal had been. It turned out that Christine had been siphoning money from our joint accounts for months, small amounts at first, then larger withdrawals, all carefully disguised as household expenses or personal shopping. It was a systematic plundering, clearly intended to build a nest egg for her new life with Michael. The artist, as I now bitterly referred to him in my head, was, as suspected, chronically unemployed, living off Christine and by extension me. The anger I felt was a constant, simmering burn. It wasn't just the infidelity anymore. It was the financial betrayal, the calculated theft from the man she had vowed to love and honor. Ms. Albright was methodical, gathering bank statements, credit card bills, and any evidence of Christine's duplicity. She advised me to change all the locks, secure all our joint assets that I could, and to communicate with Christine only through legal channels. I followed her advice to the letter. The house, which had felt so empty and haunted immediately after Christine left, slowly started to feel like a sanctuary again, a fortress against the chaos she had unleashed. The process of disentangling our lives was emotionally draining. Every shared possession, every memento from our 10 years together, was now a painful reminder of the lie I had been living. I boxed up Christine's remaining belongings, clothes, books, personal items, with a cold detachment I wouldn't have thought myself capable of. Each item was a piece of a puzzle that no longer fit, a relic from a past that felt tainted and unreal. There were, of course, the inevitable awkward conversations with friends and family. Explaining the situation was like reliving the betrayal over and over again. Some were shocked, others sympathetic. A few, I suspected, had probably seen warning signs I'd missed, but had been too polite, or perhaps too afraid, to say anything. Sarah, Christine's supposed best friend, did try to reach out a few times, sending apologetic texts. I ignored them. Her complicity, however reluctant she claimed it to be, was a betrayal I couldn't easily forgive. The story of the baby shower, Christine's grand deception, and my discovery of it inevitably spread. I became that guy, the poor sucker whose wife threw a party for her affair baby in his own house. The humiliation was a bitter pill to swallow, but I refused to let it define me. I held my head high, focused on the legal battle ahead, and on rebuilding my life. Ms. Albright warned me that divorces involving infidelity and disputed assets could get messy and protracted. Christine, through her own lawyer, was already starting to make demands. She wanted spousal support. She wanted a significant portion of the marital assets, including a stake in the house, my house, the one she had defiled with her lies. She even had the audacity to claim emotional distress. The sheer, unmitigated gall of it was breathtaking. It was clear she intended to play the victim, to paint me as the unreasonable, vengeful husband. This is where my plan for justice, or what I considered a very satisfying form of revenge, began to crystallize. It wasn't about public shaming or stooping to her level of deceit. It was about using the truth, the cold, hard facts of her betrayal, to ensure she didn't profit from her wrongdoing. Ms. Albright was initially cautious, advising against letting emotions drive legal strategy. But when I laid out the evidence I had, the timeline of her affair, the financial records showing her siphoning of funds, the witness accounts from the few people at the shower who were willing to talk, mostly out of disgust for Christine's actions once the full story came out, and even the damn banner for Chloe, which I had kept, she started to see the strength of our position. The key, I realized, was not just to prove her infidelity, which was grounds for divorce, but didn't always impact financial settlements significantly in our state, but to prove the extent of her deception and financial misconduct. The baby shower itself, the very event designed to be her moment of triumph, was now becoming her Achilles heel. The fact that she had used marital funds to throw a lavish party for a child conceived outside the marriage, under false pretenses, was a powerful piece of evidence. It demonstrated a clear misuse of shared assets and a profound breach of trust that went beyond simple infidelity. We started to build our case, meticulously documenting everything. I even managed to get a sworn affidavit from the party planner Christine had hired and paid with our joint credit card, detailing the instructions she'd received, all focused on Chloe's shower, with no mention of Sarah as the guest of honor. The invoices for the decorations, the cake, the catering, all pointed to a celebration specifically for Christine and her unborn child, Chloe. The more evidence we gathered, the clearer it became that Christine hadn't just had an affair. She had orchestrated a complex, long-term deception with significant financial implications. My revenge was going to be simple. I would ensure she walked away with nothing more than what she was strictly entitled to, and perhaps even less, given her egregious conduct. I wanted to make sure that her new life with Michael the artist wouldn't be bankrolled by my hard work and years of trusting her. It was about accountability. It was about ensuring that her choices had real, tangible consequences that she couldn't just cry or manipulate her way out of. The moment of confrontation in the lawyer's office during a settlement negotiation was immensely satisfying, though not in a loud, dramatic way. Christine was there with her lawyer, looking pale and stressed, but still trying to project an air of wronged innocence. Her lawyer presented her demands: spousal support, half the equity in the house, a portion of my retirement savings. Ms. Albright listened patiently, then calmly laid out our counterargument, presenting folder after folder of evidence. The bank statements showing the unexplained withdrawals. The credit card bills detailing the expenses for the baby shower. The affidavit from the party planner. Photos of the congratulations see cello-y banner. With each piece of evidence, Christine seemed to shrink further into her chair. Her lawyer's confident demeanor started to falter. When Ms. Albright detailed how Christine had systematically depleted joint funds for her personal use and to fund the celebration of her affair, the room fell silent. Christine's lawyer tried to argue that the baby shower expenses were shared marital entertainment, a desperate, ludicrous claim that Ms. Albright dismantled with surgical precision. "Your client, Mr. Miller," Ms. Albright said, addressing Christine's lawyer but looking directly at Christine, misappropriated marital funds for the express purpose of celebrating a child conceived outside the marriage through an adulterous affair. She did so under false pretenses, deceiving my client and effectively stealing from him to finance this deception. Furthermore, her ongoing affair and the emotional distress caused by this elaborate and public betrayal constitute egregious fault. The color drained from Christine's face. She opened her mouth to speak, perhaps to offer another excuse or denial, but her lawyer put a restraining hand on her arm. The carefully constructed victim narrative was crumbling under the weight of irrefutable facts. Ms. Albright then presented our settlement offer. Christine would walk away with her personal belongings and a very small, legally mandated portion of any remaining joint cash assets after accounting for the funds she had misappropriated. No spousal support. No stake in the house, which I would be buying her out of for a nominal sum, given her financial misconduct. No access to my retirement funds. It was a brutal offer, but it was fair, grounded in the reality of her actions. Her lawyer protested, of course, but the fight had gone out of them. They knew we had them cornered. The evidence was too damning. The alternative was a protracted, expensive court battle that Christine would almost certainly lose, in which would air all her dirty laundry even more publicly. After a tense, whispered consultation with her client, Christine's lawyer reluctantly signaled their willingness to negotiate based on our terms. The battle wasn't over, but the tide had decisively turned. That day, I didn't gloat. I didn't raise my voice. I simply watched as the consequences of Christine's actions finally caught up with her. There was no shouting match, no dramatic courtroom confession, just the quiet, methodical dismantling of her lies, piece by piece, until nothing was left but the ugly truth. And that, in its own way, was the most satisfying revenge of all. It was the revenge of truth, of accountability. She had tried to rewrite our story, to cast herself as the heroine of her own drama. But in the end, she was just a supporting character in her own downfall, a downfall she had single-handedly orchestrated. The negotiations dragged on for a few more weeks, mostly back and forth between the lawyers. But Christine's position was irrevocably weakened. The specter of a public court battle, where all the sordid details of the baby shower and her financial misconduct would be laid bare, was clearly something she wanted to avoid. Michael, the artist's boyfriend, was apparently not thrilled at the prospect of his partner's dirty laundry being aired, nor was he in any position to financially support a lengthy legal fight. In the end, she caved. She agreed to a settlement that was very close to what Ms. Albright had initially proposed. She would get her personal belongings, a small lump sum that barely covered her legal fees after the misappropriated funds were accounted for, and nothing more. I kept the house, my retirement funds, and my dignity. The divorce papers were signed on a gray, drizzly afternoon. There was no fanfare, no sense of triumph, just a quiet, profound relief. It was over. The legal battle, at least. The emotional healing, I knew, would take much longer. Christine and I didn't speak during the signing. We sat at opposite ends of a long conference table, our lawyers flanking us, the documents passing between them like peace treaties after a bitter war. When it was done, she stood up, avoided my gaze, and walked out of the room, and out of my life, for good. I learned through the grapevine that she and Michael had moved into a small, rented apartment in a less desirable part of town. Chloe was born a few weeks after the divorce was finalized. I felt nothing about that news, no anger, no sadness, just a strange emptiness. That child, and the circumstances of her conception, had been the catalyst for so much pain. But she was also an innocent in all of this. I hoped, for her sake, that Christine would find some way to be a decent mother, though her past actions didn't inspire much confidence. The months that followed were about rebuilding. I threw myself into my work, reconnected with friends I'd neglected, and slowly started to find my footing again. The house, once a symbol of betrayal, began to feel like home again. I repainted rooms, rearranged furniture, and gradually erased the last vestiges of Christine's presence. It was a cleansing process, both physically and emotionally. There were still bad days, of course. Days when the anger and bitterness would resurface, when the memories of her lies would play on a loop in my head. But those days became fewer and further between. I started therapy, which helped immensely. Talking about the betrayal, the humiliation, the grief, in a safe space allowed me to process it in a way I couldn't on my own. I learned that what Christine did was a reflection of her character, not a reflection of my worth. I learned that trust, once shattered, is incredibly hard to rebuild, but that it's possible to heal, to move forward, to even find joy again. The revenge I had achieved wasn't about inflicting pain, but about reclaiming my power, my assets, and my future. It was about ensuring that she didn't profit from her deceit. Knowing that she was facing the financial consequences of her actions, that her new life with Michael wasn't being comfortably subsidized by me, brought a quiet sense of justice. It wasn't the fiery, dramatic revenge one sees in movies, but it was real, and it was effective. It closed a chapter, firmly and decisively. Life after Christine is different. Quieter, certainly. More solitary in some ways. But also more honest, more authentic. I've learned to be more discerning about who I let into my life, more guarded with my trust. Perhaps that's a scar that will never fully fade, but it's also a valuable lesson. I'm not bitter, not anymore. The anger has mostly dissipated, replaced by a kind of weary acceptance. What happened, happened. I can't change it, but I can choose how I respond to it, how I let it shape me. And I choose not to let it define me as a victim. I'm a survivor. I survived a betrayal that would have broken many people, and I came out the other side stronger, wiser, and more resilient. I sold the house eventually. Too many ghosts, too many painful memories lingered within those walls, despite my efforts to cleanse them. I bought a smaller place, a fresh start in a new neighborhood. It felt good, like shedding an old skin. I haven't dated much. I'm not quite ready for that yet. The thought of opening myself up to that kind of vulnerability again is daunting. But I'm not closed off to the idea of love, of partnership. I just know that next time, if there is a next time, I'll be much more careful, much more observant. The baby shower, that grotesque theater of deception, remains a surreal and painful memory. But it no longer has the power to wound me as it once did. It's become a strange, cautionary tale, a reminder of how thoroughly one person can deceive another, and a reminder of my own strength in overcoming it. Sometimes I wonder what Christine is doing, how her life with Michael and Chloe turned out. Is she happy? Does she ever feel remorse for the pain she caused? I try not to dwell on it. Her life is no longer my concern. My concern is my own path, my own healing, my own future. The revenge, if you can call it that, was in not letting her destroy me. It was in rebuilding my life, piece by piece, on a foundation of honesty and self-respect. It was in ensuring that she faced the consequences of her choices rather than escaping them at my expense. It was in learning to trust myself again, my instincts, my judgment. The experience changed me, undoubtedly. I lost a certain innocence, a naive belief in the inherent goodness of people I loved. But I also gained a deeper understanding of myself, of my own resilience. I learned that I can face the worst kind of betrayal and not only survive, but eventually thrive. The scars are there, a testament to the battle I fought. But they are scars, not open wounds. And they remind me that I am stronger than I ever thought possible. The justice I sought and achieved wasn't about vengeance, but about restoring balance. It was about ensuring that deceit didn't pay. And in that, I find a quiet satisfaction, a sense of peace that allows me to look forward, not back. Looking back, I realize I lost a part of myself, but I also found something stronger. If you've ever been betrayed, know this: you're not alone, and healing is possible. Thank you for listening to my story. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more real stories like this one. Until next time, take care of yourself.